How's it going, everybody? Generally, I talk a lot. Today, I'm not talking. I have the pleasure of introducing my cousin, Reese Hopper. He has been the inspiration of the majority of my talks. If you've heard me before, I primarily steal what he's written on his website. I slept on his floor for 6 months when I first moved to LA. It is my honor to introduce author and one of my best friends, Reese Hopper.
If I force myself to create every single day, will that eventually steal the joy from my art? I talk to a lot of creatives and artists, and I come up upon this notion all the time. People wonder, if I force myself to create every single day, even on days when I'm really busy, on days when I'm tired, or days when I don't have a good idea, if I force myself to create anyway, will that eventually suck the passion out of my art? That's a fair question. It's a fair question because we're weighing the costs. We see what happens to other creatives and artists when they create every day. They grow their audiences on social, or they connect with other great collaborators, or they just get really, really good at their craft. When other people create consistently, all these benefits come, and creative consistency has been huge for me. Last year, I posted almost 400 videos on my Instagram and grew my audience to over 60,000 artists and creatives. From a period of the end of 2020 until the end of 2021, I posted 465 blogs in 465 days on my website. And that blog writing was so essential to me. A lot of those blogs were the early breadcrumbs to some of the first chapters in my book, which was published last year. And all this consistency in my life started with a humble, simple 30-day challenge. Way back in 2018, I challenged myself to post 30 blogs in 30 days. Didn't matter if I was tired or busy or if I had a good idea or any idea at all. I had to post 30 blogs in 30 days. So we see all these benefits, right? But we still ask the question, if I force myself to create every day, will that eventually steal the joy from my art? Because even with all these benefits, if along the way I lose the passion for what I love doing the most, that doesn't quite seem worth it, does it? What I want to convince you of tonight is that creative consistency is worth it. But I don't want you to hear it from me, because I'm obviously an insane person who can do the same creative act every day for 465 days in a row. I want you to hear it from other artists and creatives who are just getting started on their journeys of creative consistency. So today I want to share with you 3 unexpected benefits of creative consistency. And again, these are stories not from me, but from other artists. Earlier this year, I ran a challenge called the 15-Day Creative Consistency Challenge, where I got together with a small group of creatives and artists, and we each committed to sharing a daily creative deliverable every day for 15 days. Didn't matter if we were busy, tired, uninspired, we had to share it. So I'm going to share 3 unexpected benefits of creative consistency with you from stories of people who took on that challenge earlier this year. The first unexpected benefit of creative consistency is this. It helps you overcome your emotional blocks. This first story comes from someone named Eric. And Eric is a professional graphic designer and motion designer. He went to design school, super talented, runs a great business. He took on the 15-day challenge because he wanted to get more consistent with his personal work, with his personal projects. So for his challenge, he decided to share a sketch of a cartoon character that he had been working on a few years prior. But in the past, sketching this cartoon character was very difficult for Eric because the cartoon character was based on a friend of his who had passed away. So there was this emotional block that kept Eric from working on this cartoon character. Anytime he tried to interface with it or draw it, it was really difficult for him. In an interview, he shared this with me. He said, "This project is something that's been so personal to me. I get very precious with it. So I'll do a drawing and then I won't know where to take it next." I relate to this. I'm sure you relate to this. You've probably created something that feels very deeply connected to the deepest emotions of yourself. And when you come up against that, it's really easy to procrastinate on that work because it's hard to face those emotions. Later on in the interview, Eric told me this. He said, "This is the first time I did a drawing of this character, and then the next day I did more and more. I really started to build on it." So there was this big emotional block that was keeping Eric from interfacing with this character, from drawing this cartoon character that obviously was so personal to him and meant so much to him. But through creative consistency, that helped him overcome that emotional block, build out the character on a much deeper level than it ever was before. That's the first unexpected benefit of creative consistency. It helps you overcome emotional blocks. The second unexpected benefit of creative consistency is this. It increases your creative freedom. This next story comes from Susanna, who is not a professional artist. She's not a full-time creative, but she took on the 15-day challenge because she wanted to be more consistent with one of her hobbies, which was painting. But in an interview, she told me that she was a little bit nervous to do this with something that was just a hobby for her. She said this in an interview, "I feared showing up with consistency in a creative realm. I didn't want to suck the passion out of my passion by showing up and creating when I didn't want to." As we talked more in the interview, Susanna eventually told me that this constraint of the consistency challenge eventually brought freedom. Because her mind and her will were no longer at war. She wasn't wasting all of this creative energy deciding whether or not she would paint that day. That decision had already been made. So she got to use all of this creative energy and just use it to focus on her painting, to get into a flow state every day, which she told me greatly increased the quality of her life in those days. So it sounds ironic, but creative consistency and that commitment actually increases your creative freedom. That's the second unexpected benefit of creative consistency. And the third one is this. Creative consistency reveals depths to your art that you couldn't even see yourself. Out of all the people who took on the creative consistency challenge that I interviewed, I asked them all the same question. I asked them this. Was there a day of the challenge where you created something that you didn't really love, but you decided to share it with the group anyway, and then after sharing it, did someone tell you that it resonated with them in a way that you didn't expect? I asked everyone this question. Did you create something that you didn't love, but you shared it anyway, and when you did, someone told you they connected with it on a deeper level that you didn't even see? Asked everyone this question. More than 80% of them said yes. And I want to share a quote with you from one creator who was in the challenge. His name is Zach. He made these really interesting, dramatic, sci-fi podcast clips. They were super fun to listen to. He told me this in an interview. "My art being observed and consumed by people in a way that might actually reach them is a part of what I want." So it can sound really noble, and it can sound really artsy and interesting for us to say that we're just creating for ourselves, right? We're just doing this to express ourselves. We don't really care what people think. But if our art is coming from a place within ourselves that's deeply rooted to a deep emotion, we want people to resonate with it. We want our art to impact them. We want them to interpret it. So when we're brave enough to share our work consistently, and we put it out there for people to see and interpret, their interpretation will reveal layers to the art that we couldn't even see ourselves when we were creating it. Their interpretation will reveal depths to the art that we couldn't even see ourselves. So to recap, we discussed 3 benefits of creative consistency. Number 1, it helps you overcome emotional blocks to the work. Number 2, it increases your creative freedom. Number 3, it helps you discover a depth to your art that you couldn't even see yourself. And there are many more unexpected benefits to creative consistency. I would love it if you discovered some of those benefits for yourself, some of those different benefits for yourself. I'm running another 15-day creative consistency challenge in March. If you're interested, you can join the waitlist on my website or talk to me afterward. Love to have you involved. We're doing that in March. But to close, I will answer the original question, the original pushback. If I force myself to create every single day, will that eventually steal the joy from my art? And I'll tell you, as someone who has done the same creative act for 465 days in a row, no. Creating every day does not steal the passion from your art. For me, it's only shown me a deeper passion for that art. In fact, showing up consistently for your work may be the only way to prove to yourself that your art really means something to you. Thank you.